Welcome to 2025. Allie Dahl, Peter Hostrasser here for Disrupt Education. Allie, how are you?
You got it right. I was like, "Oh, is he gonna put the name in there?" It's great. I mean, it's not 2025 yet at the time of this recording, but we are fired up about 2025.
Um,
And just we're really excited. When we were thinking about like what to do for 2025, coming off of this awesome series in the fall. I mean, really 2024 was just incredible, let's be
mhm.
honest. Like everything you need to disrupt education, I feel like we packed into 2024. But now we're like taking it up a notch. We're getting it up a little bit hotter in 2025. So we're just to tease a little bit of like where we're going. But that is what is happening here on the podcast.
We're burning it up. Wherever you are, if it's in the middle of winter and cold, doesn't matter. We're going to bring back a guest from 4 years ago, actually, two jobs of mine ago. The educational pyromaniac, Mark Isaacs, is here with us. Mark, you are on episode 120, and now we're well into our 300s. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a while, but I'm really honored to be back on. And now there are two for the price of one. So I'm super excited to have the conversation. And congratulations on all those amazing episodes.
Thank you, thank you. It's been a trip, and also you bit the bullet again. We did Forward Fast, was your other publication. You now have one that's out. It's called Captivate, engaging and empowering students in a world of digital distractions. What There's distractions out there? I haven't seen these yet.
One or two, really, since the last time we spoke. Not much has happened in the last 4 years. No, I mean schools are. This is my 30th year in education, and if there's any pattern that I've seen more pronounced than anything else, it's that we're just desperately fighting to win the attention of students in a TikTok, YouTube, post-COVID, Instagram
Mhm.
world. And we can no longer simply teach. We have to captivate our kids. We have to intentionally grab their attention and design instruction to do just that, and to design the learning environment and the learning experience around captivating their attention. And we just can't use the same old techniques and expect the same old results.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just gonna start off this podcast with a hot question. Okay, so you call yourself, an educational pyromaniac, which I love that, which is why like we're really trying to like just set education on fire this year, like whatever that looks like for our audience. And so like we're excited to have you kick that off. But like, okay, when I was a teacher, I can't tell you how many times my teacher friends would be like, like I'm not a performer. I'm not here to like basically it's like the opposite of what your book title is. Like right, you're saying you need to captivate, and teachers will resist against that and be like, I'm here to teach and I'm not your monkey. This isn't like I'm not a performer. So like right, I just right off the bat, I want to give you a chance to be like, okay, so what is the difference? Because otherwise, I think some people are just going to turn this podcast off and they're going to be like, well, that was it.
We don't want them to turn the podcast off, for sure. And no, this is not about asking people to be circus monkeys in the circus. This is not that. But this is all about rising to meet the challenges that we face in education today. And whatever or however people described education and teaching and learning a generation or two or three ago, it's just not that anymore. It's just not that anymore. One of the examples I go into in the book, my dad was an educator for 34 years, and he was an assistant principal in an elementary school in Brooklyn and Crown Heights, not far from the old Ebbets Field. And I know, actually, as we're recording this, the Dodgers are on the eve of potentially winning a World Series, which is, heartbreaking as a New York person. But nonetheless, so his school was in the shadow of Ebbets Field, and on the first day of school, I would get my textbooks and I'd bring them home. My dad would write down the titles, and then he would go into the book closet of his school and see if any of those books were there, and he'd bring home the teacher's edition. And this was like if he had brought me a lightsaber. That maybe would have been the only thing that would have been cooler than having the teacher's edition at age 10, 11, 12. And because it had all the answers.
Yeah.
And in school, the holy grail was having the answers. That's why we worked. That's why we showed up. That's why we were, listened to our teachers, because we wanted to get the answers. We needed the answers. We had to go find the answers, provide the answers. And we got graded accordingly. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to now, and every student has the teacher's edition to everything in their pocket or on the device that we give them. So we can no longer structure learning as an exchange of your compliance for my knowledge. So therefore, we need another strategy. Otherwise, students will continue to show up because they're legally required to, but it will just be in body and not in mind. So and to get to your point, yes, there's learning science and there is a science behind learning, but there's also an artistry in figuring out how to provide instruction and deliver that instruction each day. And that is about your personality. It's about your style. It's about your technique. It's about your relationship building. It's about who you are as a person, how you internalize the science of learning, and then how that comes out of you becomes the art of teaching. And just like Da Vinci had to understand the science of color and paint and plaster and all the materials that he worked with, then he internalized that and was able to produce the works that we still celebrate 500 years later. So I feel like education is really like that now, and it requires that to be super effective. It can no longer just be sort of that exchange that I was talking about before.
Just before this conversation, I popped over, took a look at your YouTube channel. Still running the podcast, by the way. Nice work there. There's like a 7-minute video, and it really does kind of set the foundation for this book, and you captivated me. There you go. I had to say it, but
well done.
Yeah, it was the drop the do now, right? And it's very interesting the way that you set that up. Having not read the book yet, which I for some reason we have these conversations. I don't read the book yet, and then all of a sudden these things fly into my hands. Here's your previous book, and I just, oh my gosh, I'm like,
I'll be sending one your way.
Yes, thank you.
Fear not.
And in it, like the 3-minute setup, the prep, and all these things that we have as educators have been taught. This isn't like stuff that we've been taught 10, 15 years ago. This is some of the things that are maybe still being taught at the post-secondary level. How? What are some different, tidbits in the book of how can we start to captivate, and how do we change the tide, or the culture of an educational area? Could be middle school, high school, elementary school. What are your thoughts there?
Well, those are two very loaded and powerful questions that you're asking.
You're pyromaniac, man. Let's burn them.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's start with the first question, which is really the do now versus the motivation. Mm-hmm. So in a TikTok world, if you look at TikTok's analytics, you see something called the 3-second rule. Yeah. And the 3-second rule basically says that a creator has essentially that amount of time to capture a user's attention. Otherwise, they're scrolling away. And in reality, the numbers are actually closer to 1.5 seconds. But in education, we believe that 3 minutes is a good time to kind of warm up and ease into the learning. But they're coming from a phone where they're making those decisions in 1.5 to 3 seconds. So we're losing the most valuable real estate that we have in an instructional period by throwing away the first 3 minutes. And there's a reason why it was originally put in place. It was to cover a lot of administrative stuff. We have to take attendance. We have to collect the homework. We have to distribute the homework. We have to distribute the tests. We have to give out pencils. They have to sharpen them. There were reasons why we needed time, and it was all under the guise of needing structure. But just like my old 1985 Buick LeSabre used to need to warm up on a cold New York day for 5 or 6 or 8 minutes before the oil came up, before I can operate it. Now cars have fuel injection. And students' minds are also equipped with fuel injection when it comes to learning things. Because no one, when they go on YouTube, not a student or an adult, and you want to fix your washing machine and you need a video, you don't go onto videos on the history of washing machines just to warm up because you're going to be thinking about washing machines today. You go to get the exact thing that you want, and when you get it, you're gone. You pursue it until you get it, and then you're done. This is the mentality of how we learn things now. So we have to understand it. It's about grabbing the student's attention literally in the opening seconds of the lesson. So I'm going to say something blasphemous and heretical, and sorry, you know, if this is going to offend people, but like, I don't even think the aim or objective should be on the board at the beginning of the lesson. I just think it's another obstacle reminding students, I'm preaching to the converted, reminding students of why they don't like being in the classroom. It just sends all the messages to them. Oh, this is a word I don't understand. This is a subject I really don't like, or I failed this twice already. Instead of all of that, let's start with something really compelling, a concept that we can get into that requires very little in terms of like barriers to entry, but that mirrors the content that we want to teach. And then once they are interested in the thing that we are presenting to them, and we have this hook, we then have with it what I call the barb. And this is the secret weapon in terms of engaging students and keeping them engaged. And this goes back to what Ali was saying before. Teachers don't want to be the circus monkey. So, you know, what does that mean? Oh, I'm going to dress up as George Washington because I'm teaching, you know, about the foundation of America. And that's wonderful and a lot of fun, but that's a hook without a barb. And if you've ever gone fishing, if you use a hook without a barb, you'll catch the fish and then the fish just slips right off because there's nothing keeping the fish there. Same thing with dressing like George Washington. It's very cool and everybody goes crazy for the first couple of minutes. And then it's like, okay, so now the teacher's dressed as George Washington. What else? Which is very sad as a teacher because you think that that's going to be enough wind in your sails to take you through 40, 45, 50 minutes, however long your instructional period is, but it isn't. So you need something to keep students interested in what you're going to be teaching. And that's the barb that keeps students engaged. So I would love for teachers to drop the do now, stop with asking, you know, list 3 things you know about George Washington or 3 things you remember about the Constitution. And here's 3 or 5 minutes to do that. They don't need that kind of time. So we're losing them. And what happens when we lose them? The push notifications on their phones don't stop. They don't stop. And even if you take the phone away from them, they're thinking about the TikTok dance that they want to record. They're thinking about the post. They're thinking about what they're missing, what post notifications are they not seeing right now. So they're still thinking about technology, even if the technology is not physically there. So it is our responsibility. If we want them, we have to earn it by doing something compelling and interesting and captivating in the first 3 minutes. That's a motivational activity as opposed to a do now activity, which asks students to solve a problem. I'm talking about a motivation which creates a problem, and that problem can't be fully resolved until the very, very end. And that is really what happens. That's the barb that keeps everyone there, because you can't go yet because we haven't quite gotten there. Now we made some progress. We've learned some new things, but we're still not quite there. We have to keep going. And that's the difference between the do now and the motivation, in my opinion.
Nice.
I mean, it would be refreshing for those who don't know. You're in the system, like you're actively a principal, right? Or
assistant principal.
Yeah, okay, assistant principal. In the school. It would be awesome for a principal to be like, yep, get rid of the objectives, get rid of the just I'm thinking about like all the times I had to do that.
You're having PTSD.
Just for the, if I may, I'm not advocating like not having an objective. Right. I'm just saying the objective doesn't have to be presented to the students as the first thing that they're seeing, because you tell me, you've been in the classroom, I've been in the classroom. How many times has a student walked into a classroom, looked at the aim or objective, said, how can we simplify polynomials, got on their phone to their friend who's vaping in the bathroom and say, you got to get over here. We're, doing whatever to polynomials. Like that's never happened. Right? That's never happened. As a matter of fact, the opposite happens more frequently, which is, oh my God, why am I even here? I hate this class. And that's not the first vibe that we want students to have. So I'm not saying throw away the objective. I'm just saying let's use the objective after we've motivated the objective, because once you motivate the class with a concept, now you've given yourself a beautiful segue. I call it like the concept portal. You literally get to transform from the motivation right into the object of your lesson or the content that you're looking to teach. And then the beautiful thing is, when you finish teaching that lesson, you go back through that portal, back into your motivational activity. And now the students have to apply or synthesize what they've learned to the original idea that you started with. And now if they can demonstrate an understanding of that, you have assessed learning just in that exercise. So it's about being efficient, almost like a Clint Eastwood movie. He only gives you exactly what you need to tell the story. There's no fat, there's no waste. And it's totally efficient. So I'm all for that kind of thing, because teachers have more than enough on their plates.
Definitely. So how does, like, if someone's been teaching for a long time, like that can feel like a big shift. So, right? Like I can also picture it and think, oh my gosh, this is amazing and incredible. Like it would release a lot of kind of like, it creates like a new novelty in the class, because it's just like, okay, this isn't the script that I'm used to seeing if I walk into the classroom. So like that in itself is captivating for students, I'm sure. Like, how do you go about like coaching, like so for some our listeners, for those who want to try something, they haven't gotten the book yet, but they're like, okay, well, what's one thing realistically that I could change or I could think about to try this? Because it's a shift in like the mindset of how you even approach designing a lesson.
Absolutely. And by the way, I have these conversations with teachers all the time, and you should see the look. I mean, their face just drains of color. I keep an AED in my office just for emergencies. Because what I'm advocating is exactly what you're describing. Let's try it. I want to create a supportive environment for all teachers, not where I'm checking lists of like, what is the educational or instructional dogma of 100 years ago, and are you meeting that litmus test today? I'm not interested in that. As their educational or instructional leader, so to speak, I want to create space for them to try and push into new areas so they can feel the almost like invigorated by the opportunity to do something different and new. Because we all know through cognitive entrenchment and cognitive bias, we can, and what, which in schools is that's the way we've always done it answer to every question, that can very easily destroy a teacher, their creative potential, their innovative potential, and ultimately a school's innovative potential. And capacity to really meet the needs of students. And that's how a 1-year career can be, or 30-year career rather, could be a 1-year career just repeated 30 times. And students deserve better, and educators deserve better. So it's not just about the kids, it's about making it electric and making it interesting for teachers. So one of the things I suggest is to start slowly, and start with one lesson, start with one idea. Just give it a shot. And I've been known to, like, I call it like a blank page, invite, where I'll ask them to come into the office, or I'll meet them in their office, and we sit down with a blank piece of paper and just brainstorm together, like, how can we start this lesson in a really interesting and exciting way? And we'll bounce ideas back and forth. And just having that conversation alone is enough to just like I said, just, like invigorate someone, where they feel like, you know what, I can do this. I want to do this. And then once they try it and have some success with it, well, then they're just hooked, because they see how much the students respond to it. They get responses and engagement and participation that they've never seen before. And they want to experience that high over and over and over again, because educators, by and large, are really wonderful people, giving people, and they want nothing but the very best for the students that they serve.
Yeah. And so my question is kind of piggybacking off of that, right? As students go through the typical traditional K through 12 system, right? There comes that turning point, right? The data will tell you the drop off happens after 5th grade, and then after 7th, 8th grade, and then again after your sophomore year. So when, like, in your experiences, when is the optimal time to start to, because I don't think you have to captivate all the time, like maybe a third grader, right? Maybe you do, but in my experiences and in conversations with people I know in elementary school, early elementary, it's a little bit, easier. You're the adult in the room. There, it's just, and then that shift starts to happen. When does captivating a student may need to happen? I can tell you in high school, I know it's all 4 years, but like what, I'm a secondary educator, but in your experiences, have you looked at, what levels are we looking at here?
So my wife is a pre-K, kindergarten teacher. She's an elementary school teacher, and so I'll try to answer that question through the lens of what I see,
Right.
Because my experience has primarily been 7 through 12 in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in the kindergarten classroom is captivate, 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 captivate,
Right.
captivate. Everything. And what happens in kindergarten? Kids go home and they tell their parents that they love school.
Yeah.
Then slowly but surely, we start to get serious. We have to be serious students. So what does that really mean? We're going to just test you more. You're going to have to regurgitate more. So we don't have time for fun because we have to learn.
Yeah.
And so whatever grade that conversation starts to have, that's the moment. That's the moment, because we have to just redefine fun. Fun can be hard. Fun can be challenging. Fun can be difficult, but it can still be fun. When you play a great video game, great video games are really hard, and you have to work a lot to get good at them and have success. But they're able to capture you because they use the elements of Csikszentmihalyi's flow theory, which is basically start at the exact point where you have just enough skill to just capture or just get to succeed at this one thing. And then once you demonstrate that you can do it, it's never that easy again. So if you want that release of dopamine, if you want all those feel-good chemicals to release in your brain, then you have to be able to demonstrate more. So when you start playing a video game, it prompts you, right? Push X to punch. Okay, so you push X to punch, and then you realize how to move around a little bit with the joystick, and then you're finally successful with the first level. But the next level, you have to kick and punch. Well, that's a new button. So you may mess up. You learn how to do it, and it just keeps you in that zone of flow. As in education, we don't pay due respect to the concept of flow. And we don't necessarily design instruction, whether it be a single lesson, a unit, or even a year's worth of instruction, or even an entire range of grades worth of instruction with that in mind. So to answer your question, it's wherever that moment is where we start saying things like, you have to get serious now. This is not, there's no time for fun. We have to redefine what fun means, because when kids come out of kindergarten, first grade, they're excited and they're literally like full of energy. But when they come out of high school, it's a whole different feeling. And that vibe is not okay, because we need to continue to challenge them. We need to continue to inspire them, because we want nothing but the very best for them, but we have to light them on fire in order to accomplish that.
Right.
Their minds,
awesome.
obviously.
Yes,
No,
of course.
yeah,
The lawyers are like, yo, what did you just say? No.
Yeah, search engines are funny things. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they will come at you with everything. Okay, so for since we're kicking off 2025, and we had all these conversations in the fall to round out 2024 with people who are deep in the work. You are definitely deep in the work of education. I mean, if you're on year 30, you have been, you've seen a lot of changes, many of which you've discussed already on this episode. But right, when we're thinking about disrupting education and setting it afire and just really captivating students, this can be something you talk about in the book or just something you feel passionately about. What do you think is one of the biggest opportunities for the system for 2025? What are we missing? What opportunities should we be thinking about? You're doing the work, you're in the work, and you're also thinking about how to kind of go beyond your individual place by writing a book and sharing that with people, right? So you have this perspective, you're talking to us on the podcast, I'm sure you talk to other people. What are you seeing, and what would you say to kind of help us think about for this new year?
Wow. Both of you ask incredible questions and so thought-provoking. So let me start with a concept that I do talk about in the book. It's a study that was done 100 plus years ago, where it's called the Einstein effect, which basically means that they did a study and people had to solve a certain problem, and they became good at solving these problems. Let's say it was like a 3-step equation, so they would get good at solving these three-step equations. So then the researchers changed the problem. It could be solved actually in 2 steps or 3 steps. And people almost, more than a majority kept solving it using 3 steps, even though an easier way was available. And they concluded that one of the reasons that people kept doing the same thing over and over again is because they already had proficiency and success in their 3-step method. So they just weren't looking for anything else. So even though a 2-step method was clearly available, they didn't bother to look for it. The analogy that I draw in the book is if you look at someone who's using a computer who's been, let's say, north of 40 years old, they very often go to the edit dropdown and click copy. And then they go to the edit dropdown and click paste. But they don't know about Command C or Command V, which is a shortcut, because they're not looking for it. And the irony is, in this study, Abraham Luchins, who was the researcher, warned the participants. He said, "Don't be blind," as a way to wake them up, and they still kept solving it in 3 steps. And Google does the same thing, and so does Microsoft in their dropdown, because when you hit edit, it shows you Command C, but people just look right past it, even though they're reminding you, don't be blind. So what I would say to you, Ali, is like, where is the opportunity? The opportunity is in our mindsets not to be blind. Look at everything, because we build a lot of cognitive bias, a lot of cognitive entrenchment into our calendar, into our contracts, into the way that we frame the year, into the marking periods, into the timing of the periods. So every year literally tries to replicate the year prior. And that is one of the reasons why it forces people or locks people into cognitive entrenchment, as opposed to trying to release them. So my answer to you is, don't be blind. Let us change our mindset and recognize that it's okay to try to seek other opportunities, other ways of approaching learning, teaching, instruction, school, you name it. And the other part of that is, and we have a very bad history of this in education. Whenever new technology comes around, our first instinct is to ban it, hide it, ban it, put your head in the sand, look the other way, pretend it doesn't exist. We did this with literally everything, from when the computer first came around to when Google came around. Don't let them Google it, make them write it out. And now AI is here, right? So don't let them use the computer. They have to write it by hand. We all we think about is regulation, when our first instinct should be education. Because that's what we know how to do well. Regulation, we don't do well. And we're always wrong. History always proves us wrong. So here we are with AI, and now everybody's trying to hide AI. Don't let the kids see AI. But the world is literally infusing AI into everything that we do. So the real answer is, don't be blind. How can we leverage new technology, leverage AI, so we can do bigger and better things for our students, and so they can do bigger and better things? Because that's the real miss with technology. We don't use the full leverage of technology. In the book, I talk about the differences between what I call transactions and transformations. So if you use technology to give out worksheets digitally, collect work digitally, remind kids about things digitally, okay, those are great efficiencies. There's nothing wrong with them whatsoever. But it's like putting the fulcrum too close to your hand when you're trying to use a lever. You're using it, but you're not getting maximum, advantage, right? However, if you put the fulcrum further away, now all of a sudden, as why am I blanking out on his name? The great Archimedes, the great Greek polymath. As he said, give me a lever, a fulcrum and a lever long enough, and I'll move the world. Mm-hmm. Our technology is giving the kids the opportunity to be able to move the world, but we're using it for transactions instead of transformations. So those would be the three areas where I would look.
AI, you opened it up. Let's ban it. Well, the funny thing was, is right before this conversation, we were talking about sharing a new kind of AI tool, mm-hmm. which is hilarious. I'm going to ask you one last question here before we go to Allie's final thought.
Sure.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
That's a wonderful
boom. I know that came out of left field, but whatever.
This goes back to what I was saying before. If all we want is to kind of recreate the appearance of what school used to look like, so everyone doesn't feel the jolt, well, then I guess we're stuck with the school year as it currently exists. Mm-hmm. But if we want to reframe or how we do our coursework, and this is one of those things I'm talking about. Like, we have to be willing to examine everything and anything. Mm-hmm. How long does it take a student to learn photosynthesis? Well, some students need 5 days. Some students need an hour. Some students can get it in 10 minutes. So I don't know. Do we have different tracks for everybody? I know this is like, mind-breaking things. Like, mm-hmm. we'd have to seriously sit down and figure out what that would look like.
Right.
But this lockstep industrial model clearly is not working in an AI, internet world. And it's leaving a lot of kids behind. And we're seeing that in the gaps of achievement, mm-hmm. Which just perpetually get worse and worse every year. So we throw more and more money and more ideas and more programs and initiatives at it. And then we check the data 18 months later, and it's worse than it's ever been. So isn't that a clue that mm-hmm. maybe we have to approach it from a different, through a different lens? So how long does school need to be? I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids. I want them to be in the most incredible position to be able to live the lives that they deserve to live, have the autonomy and the skills and the intelligence to live the exact life that they want to live, that will bring them joy and success and happiness, whatever that looks like for them. And so whatever we need to do to provide that for them, then, I'm all on board for that.
See how I did that? I teased out a little bit of fast forward, brought it all the way to Captivate there. That's because you did unload a lot of that in your first book. And that was wonderful. So, Allie, I want to ask you final thoughts.
Oh, this is tough because there's so many nuggets. You dropped so many, so in the fall, I would say, disrupting education, what we learned is it doesn't have to be a bomb of you don't need to literally set everything on fire. But yet I feel like some of the things that you're saying is, well, yes, you could do that. If you're really going to disrupt education, you're going to be a pyromaniac about teaching and learning, then maybe you do need to set it on fire. And I actually support that message. It doesn't have to be there can be just a lesson, but if you're really going to be don't be blind, don't get entrenched into just doing what we've always done, and not be willing to pick up all of the blocks that quote unquote school is built on and be actually, let's just knock them all over and start fresh. Then you're not really ready to just, I think, disrupt. It's going to take the mindset has to be there first, which we have a great series on mindset, and then people doing the work, right? And so now to kind of be look, we can set education ablaze, and the work that you're doing and the school, man, I just feel people are going to want to apply to work with you because the way you approach education. Yes. If you're in New York on Long Island, look up Mark and see if he's got openings. I'm sure he probably doesn't, because it sounds like your working environment's amazing. But those would be some of my final thoughts for this episode.
I love that. And I kind of wanted to add in there, I love the don't be blind, Mark. Like really, I think one of the biggest mindset changes that I had in education, and I think a lot of forward thinkers in education who are sticking it out, right? I mean, we lost a lot in the burnout and in the pandemic and et
Hmm.
cetera, is don't be blind to how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way as an educator, right? I feel like there's a lot of social emotional learning across the board, which they tag that, but a lot of personalized learning. And before this conversation, I was talking about, when you sit in, the teacher caf or in the offices, and if you find yourself really just angry and constantly going into a whirlpool of negativity, I think you have to stop and don't be blind to that. That's okay. Everybody has a venting mechanism, but then when does the point come that you want to reinitiate something, and you're going to hit that wall? And I think you eloquently put that there. Before we get into where people can find you in the book, are we missing anything? Is there some last words you want to throw out there?
Sure. Well, obviously, I threw a lot of big ideas out here in our conversation, and I understand that most educators don't have the ability to reform the entire system. I don't have that either.
Yeah.
So I've elected to do is, what is the corner of the world that I can impact? And I'm going to start there. Like, I don't have the ability to burn down all the things that don't work in light fires onto all the people who do. But I can do that in a very small corner of the world, and then try to use platforms like these and the book and so on and so forth to try to spread that message. So whereas we spent the first 100 years of education focused on 3 R's, even only one of them was actually started with an R: reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'd like us to spend the next 100 years trying to figure out how to build instructional and learning environments around just a single R, which is relevance, because that's going to be the key to our success. So to whatever extent anyone who's hearing or watching this has impact over even the tiniest corner of the world, and everybody has control over something, as small as it may be in the grand scheme of things. Try it. Try to make your impact in just the world that you have, the opportunity to. And then if enough people start to do that, then we'll eventually have the change that we need for our kids. And the system will slowly, but eventually get there. But it will take, all of us, a small army of us, to kind of make that grassroots kind of change.
Wonderful, wonderful ending statement there. Thank you. How can people connect with you and get this amazing book?
Well, the book's available on Amazon, and they can follow me on my website, markisix.com. They can also check me out on YouTube at EduPyro, EDUPYRO, where I've been putting up a series of videos, and I'll continue to do that, sharing ideas from the book. And I'm on Twitter at markisix. So there are plenty of places. I have a link tree on my website, so they can find me any number of places. But the book is currently on sale at Amazon, and actually one of the top 10 new releases. So I'm really proud about that, and just hope to keep that rolling and share these ideas with as many people as I can.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you back after a 4-year hiatus on the Disrupt Education podcast, but we're really, really happy to see that you're continuing, and just, a forward-thinking educator who's really disrupting education. So thank you so much for taking some time out with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you both for having me on.
All right. So for Ali Dahl, I am Peter Hostrasser. Thank you all for listening to the Disrupt Education podcast. Please make sure you hit that subscribe, share this out. Let's get disrupting in a good way and make education even better for everyone. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co. or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Ali Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.